He's the one that kind of put this, or helped put this exempt leave
Yeah.
policy together, so he'll get here as quick as he can.
I'm not running the one out
Well,
to
let's-
Lance's office.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the proposed positions that Penny has. And why you need them.
You want me to talk about them?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm taking my mask off so you can hear me.
okay,
I have had several positions leave inside my budget. I tracked the number of money I have. I have over $166,000 in wages alone, not including benefits that I can spend for new employees that will not alter what I'm spending on salary and benefits.
okay,
And
those are approved positions that you
Approved?
haven't filled,
approved positions that I am not going to fill.
right, okay,
I'm eliminating those positions.
and transferring them into these positions.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, not the whole amount.
Well,
But
it'd
yeah.
still be less than what you're downsizing, but increasing
Correct,
capacity.
correct.
Okay,
Okay. And so there is no cost, new monies associated with these positions. I actually hired Ron to be my chief deputy. What we didn't realize is the county needed an accountant worse than I needed a chief deputy. He doesn't have time to help me out with the stuff that I need. So for the last 5 years, I've been doing it myself. I need help. So I need to hire a chief deputy. We could not find a position that in the budget because we had, the auditor, the treasurer, those, but we didn't find one that actually fit the mold. So I created a new job description, had John review it. He went out and got some salary ranges from different counties, and so that's kind of it. They're going to be exempt positions depending on experience. So that's the chief deputy, and then as I mentioned, Ron, the county was badly in need of an accountant. Ron can't even do all the things we need him to do. We want to get involved in tracking fixed assets, which we haven't been able to. More training, day-to-day things that he can help, that this person can help Ron with, so that Ron can do the higher level accounting that we hired him for, the analysis, the CAFRs, the kind of stuff that we really need Ron to be doing that he hasn't been able to. So that's the reason I need to hire the staff accountant, which will be an assistant to Ron. Again, an exempt position. Again, John did a salary survey and we'll go within the ranges that we found in the other counties.
Which, can you share what that is, or?
The chief deputy was between 64 and 69, 65 and 70.
Well,
I can't
that's
remember.
kind of the range we were thinking. I think the actual range was like 62 to 80. I mean, it was a wide range, but we were thinking, looking at internal equity and, the comparisons were, what would we say, 64 to 69-ish, something like that.
Yeah. Or was that the accountant one?
I think that was the chief deputy.
Okay, and the accountant was more around 60 to 65? Is that what we were looking at?
55 to 65, something like that, depending on experience.
So both of them somewhere 60 to 70.
Okay.
one thing they talked about with this new stimulus money, and I think, I don't know if we've got an answer on this, but to be able to track that is going to be quite complex. And I think they brought up the possibility that you may be able to hire a person to do that.
And that'd be great if we can use that money for it. It just puts that much back in our county.
Yeah, because here's a thought on that, is if you got to pay, we're able to pay for this for a couple of years, you've got to build in your budget, that would go into reserves, as long as we don't build a position on that one-time money.
Yeah, and that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Like I said, I feel like it's more take it out of the budget, and then if we can put that money back into the budget, it just, but yeah.
Would the staff accountant position be able to do that?
Like I said, they're gonna work hand in hand with Ron, and so Ron can decide. I will have Ron actually supervising them. So Ron can decide what this person can and is able to do, and then he'll, like I said, do the supervision. So he'll divide the responsibilities that way.
but the position could qualify if it's
Oh, yeah,
registered.
oh, yeah, we can have him do that. Him, her, I don't know who it's gonna be.
Does that potentially change the classification of Ron? When I heard you say he would be supervising.
Well, Ron is exempt, so he's not
Oh,
classified.
oh,
We
okay.
certainly could look at, consider supervisory duties, you know, with additional duties, additional pay. I mean,
But we haven't
That's-
got, I'm gonna put it on.
Okay.
something you all could, under your discretion,
Staff
decide
accountant.
on.
Ron is a senior.
There's no salary ranges for salary folks.
Okay, all right.
Ron makes, I think, just over 81,000. So
Okay.
we made sure that the staff accountant was not,
It was well below him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Guys got any questions? You must be on mute, Blake.
I could be, am I?
I think they're positions that are long overdue, really. You've scraped by for a long time.
well, I didn't know where to put him. I didn't know where the real need was, and I think this focuses in on what we need.
Yeah,
So you're taking 3 positions, creating 2, which will cost less than,
It'll be 3.5. Right now, I'm down 3, but pretty soon it'll be another half. of it.
okay, but you're replacing it with 2 at higher level.
Mhm.
And then in the future budget with that extra room, you can decide if you want to replace at a lower level, if it fits.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody object to that? Okay, we good?
yeah.
Okay. As soon as Danny gets here. I know he was struggling to understand our interpretation of this name clearing hearing, replacing the grievance. Because last time the conversation got so confused because we kept talking about classifieds and non-classifieds and applying one to the other. So I just think I asked John if he'd put it on so we can make sure we're looking at what I thought we were originally looking at. I could probably, I know it drives John nuts, but I'll go to the whiteboard because this is what I had to do with John because I was trying to explain it. Okay, we got your classified. Which are hourly.
Hourly, yeah.
I was thinking,
And unclassified. Which salary. Okay, originally, the way this started, as I understood it, was the classifieds, and I think this was kind of brought up by the sheriff's operation. Right now, we have a grievance policy with a board that gets together that takes an awful lot of time, and it's very cumbersome. And what had been proposed was what do we call it, a name clearing here, right to be heard.
Yeah, after you've heard, or, yeah, same thing.
The original intention, as I remember it, was inserting this and replacing that. And last time we got so hung up on thinking that this was on this side, which is it isn't. Because on this side, the salaried individuals have what would we call it, the federal protections? Due process, I mean.
I think the classifieds have due process,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if we're disciplining
Correct.
We have to,
Yeah, so,
they have a due process right on the classified side.
yeah, so exactly, the sheriff's exactly right. The
Yeah.
classifieds, the hourly folks are for cause, they have a due process right from the get-go. If there's
Right.
any suspension, demotion, termination,
And that always took place ahead of this,
yes.
because they could go from there to there.
Correct. So the problem we have with the grievance board is we've already gone through all of our due process and we have decided to take action on them. And now you have this arbitrary board that's basically telling the electeds, no, you know, basically looking at what the elected has done and could potentially find conflict there, right? And so the grievance board to us just creates a level of problem that's not needed. It has been the discussions I've been involved in, because we've already given them due process. This name clearing piece or right to be heard piece.
That was ICRIP's suggestion.
Right, was this new piece of, you've got to provide the person with an opportunity to clear their name, to say, you know, that's not the way this was. They've got it all wrong, however. So my understanding was that applies across the board and also to our appointed positions.
That's the question.
Right.
Does this apply over here?
Right.
Because, I mean, that's probably the bigger part of the question, is on salaried.
But my understanding is an appointed position doesn't have a due process right.
But they're at will.
Yeah, they're at will and you can say, hey, this isn't working out.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of thing, you know, kind of appointed one.
Correct.
That's my understanding. And that's kind of the way we've handled them, you know, if it's an appointed position that at the discretion of the elected, then that's different than the classified employee who has a for cause process and a due process right where you can show that you've gone through that.
Yeah.
Why would we not apply the right to be heard to salary?
I don't know.
I don't think there's any reason not to.
That's the way I am.
That was the open-ended discussion, but I think I kept getting confused because the way the discussion kept hopping back and forth on the due process and the grievance board. And, you know, it's easier for me when I look at it and says, okay, that's hourly, that's salaried. You know, because you say classified and unclassified, you gotta sit and.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong to provide a right to be heard across the board. It's just a matter of process. The only one I was involved in was when we were doing the crisis center. In managing that, I had an individual that worked for Madison County. He had his employment terminated with Madison. When we found out about it, Morgan told me you need to offer him a name clearing hearing. So I did that and I directed him actually to our human resources. And he never took us up on it. But basically all it was just a notification. You have the right to a name clearing hearing. You need to notify us within the next 2 weeks if you want that. And I did that in writing and that was it.
Okay, so for guidance for John to write the policy, if we go that way, do you have a time limit? This is where it'd be good to get Danny's input too, but.
So we actually still have an opportunity to be heard policy that was created, I think, by this situation, by.
Or around that
Is that
time.
correct? So we have an opportunity to be heard policy in place, but I think it's, well, I think maybe it's for all employees.
I think it is.
I think it
That's
is.
the way it's set.
And so it's in place.
Can we look that up to make sure so we can get this thing put to bed after 6 months or a year?
I can go grab a,
Why don't
well,
you
we've
while
got
Danny's
time, I can
coming?
grab,
Yeah,
grab
'cause-
copies.
Because then we can finalize it.
So is a name clearing and a right to be heard? Go ahead, John. It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just making sure all our policies are consistent and we know, you know, because we were getting them cross-threaded.
So you're the one who let go the employee.
No, so Madison the the way we had that set up, if they were terminated from their main employer, they couldn't work for us at the crisis center because they had to be certified in good standing with their agency. But when he got terminated from Madison, I said, hey, he's been terminated from up there. They said, we'll offer him a name clearing hearing with us because he's still one of our employees. But so that's what I did. I just said, hey, you have 2 weeks. If you'd like this name clearing hearing, please get in touch.
Oh, he was still one of your employees because he was working at the crisis center.
So
Okay.
basically, we were terminating his employment from us based on the situation with Madison County. And so all I ever did was serve him notice that he had the right to that hearing if he wanted it. And then nothing came of it. So we didn't actually run the hearing.
So what does a name clearing or right to be heard, what does that do? Does that maybe change
I think
the
it satisfies,
recommendation you give?
I think it satisfies the due process right. So they can't come back and say, you didn't let me counter what was being said about me. You just terminated me and didn't let me counter it. Is what I think ICRIM's interest is it's closing that loophole of a due process claim against the county. That's why I think they want it. What that actually looks like for us is, I guess however we want to operate it. But we do that already inside the classifieds. If somebody's disciplined, they can automatically grieve that to the next supervisor level. So if one of my lieutenants disciplines someone, they can bring that to James. And if James upholds it, they can bring it to me. And then if they still want to fight it currently, they can go to a grievance board, right? And what we're saying is take the grievance board out of it rather than have that in there. But that's always been our position, is to get rid of that because it is kind of cumbersome. And then you get people that are not necessarily familiar with the particular issue, and so they may see it differently than we do as law enforcement.
Well, and we've seen some of those take a day. Sometimes they've even gone into a couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I've seen them split. I've seen the grievance board split on their decision too.
Okay, just to bring you up to speed, I started explaining to them just so we can get some clarity and come to a conclusion on the right to be heard or the name clearing and the grievance board. I did it the only way I can understand is so I can keep track of stuff. This is what I understood it, that the classifieds are hourly people. Right now already have a due process. And from that, they went to a grievance board. What the intent is to eliminate the grievance board and replace it with the right to be heard or the name clearing. The open-ended question, and John's going to get the policy when we did the right to be heard policy, is does that include salaries and do we want it to still include unclassifieds? Everybody understand that? Could you guys see that board very well?
No.
Oh,
Last reflection.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's.
But do you understand, the difference between classifieds and non-classifieds?
yeah.
I just have to draw a picture because I'm not as smart as Danny. But what we're trying to find out now is what the current policy allows for and whether, when we write this policy in, make sure we don't write it to conflict with the right to be heard policy that exists now.
Okay.
See, because right now, when we did the right to be heard, you've got due process, grievance board, and right to be heard.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Because we intended to replace one with the other, but we forgot to take care of the other, or the one.
Yeah, I think cleaning up the classified one frankly seems simple enough because I think ideologically, from what I've heard, everybody's kind of on the same page. The separate question is what level of that do do you want to exist with unclassified? And that's, it's just something to kind of kick around as to what you want. My only point in the last meeting was, if you're gonna create a right with the unclassifieds, then let's make sure it comports with the current case law, right? In other words, don't treat them like classifieds if the law doesn't, unless you want to make them classified employees. That makes sense? Around that? So they're separate issues.
Okay, and if when we did that, we included unclassifieds, should we be looking at that if that creates something that wasn't in the law? Because you're saying that if we do that and it wasn't there before, you're creating.
Well, for example, the way it was written last time we got together is you had unclassifieds lumped into what looked like a classified employee due process here, okay? And I took 15 minutes and researched it. I'm no expert on it, I told you that at the time. But just a quick look gave me the impression that for unclassified employees, we were potentially creating rights that under the law they don't currently have. And did this body want to do that? And that's an honest question. If you say yes, okay, that's fine. But I just want to make sure we knew that's what we were doing, because that's the way it looked. And at that, then we just kind of figured we were going to work through the classified, get it figured out, and then stew on the issue of how you want to handle the unclassified, how this group, wants to treat those.
So Danny, are you saying that if we change this and have the right to be heard type thing for classified employees, that it changes them from like at will to for cause?
Okay, you just said classified.
Unclassified, sorry,
Call it salaried and hourly.
salary,
All right,
Okay.
we're gonna call our salarieds or unclassified.
okay.
All right. What I was saying is, if you have, my view is if you have a policy, let's say it's a salaried employee, and their termination, you have a policy that says, Barlow County needs to go through these steps in order for that termination to be appropriate. Then, even if legally that's not required, it's now in your policy and you need to follow it.
So doesn't that kind of make them for cause employees instead of at will?
That's my point.
And yeah, and I don't think we want to do that.
That's my issue,
Okay,
is we don't want to create, I don't believe, for unclassifieds, we want to create rights that don't currently exist under the law. Again, it's these three folks here, it's their call ultimately, but legally, I would say, if a certain right exists and a certain property right to a job exists, whether you're classified or unclassified, and if you want to put that in your policy, fine. But I would caution against adding requirements to the employer that don't exist. This all clear as mud in my head. I don't know if I'm
I
smart
thought
enough.
that's where we ended up in the last discussion.
Isn't
We
ICRIMS,
ended up
Long
with
way to get
we
around.
ended up with a policy that was just a cluster.
isn't ICRIMS position that they want a name clearing hearing for all employees?
I thought it was just
Classified.
I thought that after going through it a couple of times, that was pretty clear.
But there are other things that they leave a little discretion to us, like drug testing. That we don't go exactly as they advise. What we're trying to do is meet enough of the concerns that we can stay in good standing with our insurance company.
Is it in your email or
I mean, other than
Jay,
Jordan and I,
you can try?
that we hold, I would suggest the vast majority of unclassified employees in the county.
Oh,
I don't know.
Penny's just added more than your whole staff while you were gone.
Unclassified?
Should have been here
Can you
earlier.
get it or?
Well, I guess what I'm saying
More
is
than
it's a
your
small
whole staff.
number. I'd like to hear, whatever, I'd like to hear from Jordan if he disagrees on this. I've got kind of two roles here. One, giving you the opinion, and then two, of an affected party, right? I want to make sure they're kind of separate, but Jordan may disagree with me, and he's an office head, and
I don't know.
half his office is unclassified, so maybe he feels differently.
Well, the head just popped up on the picture, so.
Oh, there's a pretty head.
John?
Jordan, could you hear me?
I could, yeah.
Where are you at on this? Because you and me are the most affected.
Document
I would lean towards not adding a procedure or process or right that we don't want to add. I think once you throw it out there on paper, you're going to have to own up to it, and you're going to be inviting issues and liability and fights over whether you should or shouldn't have, or it was right. And if it's not necessary,
Don't
I
do
just
it.
be able to let the heads roll if I want to, and so.
I agree with him.
John? Henderson?
Yeah.
Do you know if ICRIMP requires us to have a name clearing hearing or recommends that
They recommend it.
Recommend it.
For
Okay.
unclassified.
for salary
Salary,
employees?
yes.
And somehow this got morphed into us thinking it was for unclassified. And that's where I think
Hold on, we're still talking passage here. It is for unclassified.
For salaried employees?
for salaried, classifieds are salary, or
No, classifieds
hourly.
are hourly.
Okay, we had it for hourly, but somehow it got moved towards being for everybody, which,
Because ICRIM's recommended.
That's what I
Yeah. but we don't have to go along with 100% exactly the way they say, or there's a lot of other policies that I've got a lot of heartburn having our insurance company dictate our policy totally.
Well, my advice is bite this elephant in chunks. One, classified employee. What I've heard all along, and I'm still hearing, is get rid of the grievance board, institute a due process, no opportunity to be heard, hearing.
We already have a due process policy for
So it's just simply a removal of
the board and replacing it with the right to be heard or name clearing.
that can be in the classified. You could have an unclassified section, spells out your wishes there, knowing that ICRIM is recommending at least some measure of this with unclassified. What's the executive board's feelings on that?
So it looks like our current policy is for at-will only, which is unclassified.
Which I think we got it backwards then when we did it, if that's the case.
So this policy came about, I think, from the issue with Morgan. Is that correct, Sheriff?
I believe
This was to replace the grievance committee.
I believe he chimed in on this, but the one that he had me do was actually for a hourly employee.
Yeah.
So,
I think we erred when we put all at will, and it should have been all classified employees. Because this doesn't even address the for cause people or the grievance board.
Correct.
Right, so ICRIM's recommendation, I just want to get back to their thought was that we get rid of grievance procedure and add an opportunity to be heard for salaried employees. That's kind of what they were thinking.
Well, they were saying at will employees, but
Yeah.
their desire is that we change all of our employees to at will. That's
Yeah.
what they've been trying.
Yeah.
City of Idaho Falls is all at will. We haven't gone through and taken on that battle. So
Because for cause employees have a due process right. And I think part of their concern, if I remember right, was potentially adding a right really that isn't really there. I think that was their concern.
Who's they?
ICRIM, Erickson,
Their concern is what?
that our grievance procedure provides a right to the employee unnecessarily.
beyond the due process, right?
Correct.
again, that's classified hourly folks.
The due process is, but not the
Correct.
opportunity to be heard.
And reading this, I think the reason Morgan had me do that on that one employee was because he was a temporary employee. He was classified as a temporary employee. Reading this policy, you fall under that. So,
So as you got it right now, your at-will unclassified salaries have a name clearing hearing right. That's what you currently got.
At will, unclassified.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, I thought you said
Okay, but we
classified.
also have not changed
That's why I said
that.
all three.
Okay,
But that's, we also have not changed that for the classifieds by definition, replacing the grievance board.
Right,
That's the part that got dropped out of this.
yeah, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing, was replacing that grievance policy
Right.
with this? for
And that
those
didn't
employees.
happen, and somehow this got into the at-will employees. So where this is in our policy already, does that change the way you look at it?
But we have a due process for the hourly.
Yes. You
So
have
we
due
don't-
process
So we also have
and
a
a name
grievance, which is
clearing
what
hearing.
we'll get rid of.
Do we have a name clearing hearing for the hourly?
We
Well-
will by changing this.
Well,
Do we want to?
it is sort of built into the due process.
Yeah.
They have, isn't it?
well, yeah,
Would you
I mean,
consider that?
ultimately, in that process, they are given the opportunity to
Right.
discuss what they want to discuss. We always, that's part of the due process.
Right.
And they have, potentially, depending on where they're in the structure, they have a minimum of 2 to 3 opportunities
Yeah.
to be heard.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we need this and the due process for hourly employees.
I agree.
just the due process that we can't have, and then just cut it off at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do away with the grievance.
They do have a right, they're already having an opportunity to be heard in the due process. So this adds an additional layer. So they go through potentially they could go through a due process hearing. They already have their right to be heard, and then they would have something like this in addition to, so it's a duplicate.
But this is the only thing that salaried employees have.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I don't like to log you. I apologize for commandeering time. But on the due process hearing, because I'm just not terribly experienced at this. In the due process hearing for the hourly person, is a name clearing right exist within that due process hearing? That makes sense what I'm saying?
Yeah,
In other words, if it can all be written as one procedure,
I was gonna say, I see where you're going.
because they're entitled. If you allege a classified employee, you allege one of these triggering things, and that's part of the reason you're going through this due process. They ought to be able to clear their name, if it's part of it. And if it is, then that procedure and policy can stand on its own. And I think we're protecting all the rights of an hourly employee through that process. Because we just want to treat different people different. I'll make sure we're spelling out exactly what. So my point is, do you need to add a name clearing right within that due process procedure or not? That's really the million-dollar question.
That seems like the more logical place to put it, keeping it simple and not having 2 or 3 different policies.
Sure.
Well, didn't you just say that in the due process, that's part of the name clearing?
I asked if it was.
If it's
Well, what I
spelled
don't
out.
know is
I'm not
I don't think we have
experienced in
anything in county policy that says that right now, correct? We don't have anything in county policy.
Well, but that's, I think what Danny's saying is, it might satisfy this if you put that in the due process hearing that just said they have a right to submit to whichever
I don't see
level
why
that
not.
comes through your operation, their statement.
And that's what they effectively do. We just need wording to that.
We just need the policy to
county.
back it up.
But yes, that's functionally what they're doing, when you're telling them, hey, this is basically what we do is we give them a notice of a disciplinary hearing. And they're given that notice, and then they come prepared to answer that. And then after they answer it, we take a break. That might be for an hour, it might be for a few days. And then we come back and administer the discipline after we've taken into account their statement.
Yeah.
That's the
Which
due
is the
process.
name clearing thing.
Yeah.
That's how it should be done.
Okay, so we need to include that in the due process that they're adhering to, the policy we have now that provides for the due process.
We can add some language that they have that
And
right.
they just eliminate this because it's an extra,
No, this is not extra because this pertains to salary.
you know.
And salary employees don't have a due process.
This current.
Which is why a year ago you put this one in for salary, or was that a mistake?
I thought it was for hourly when we put this in.
I don't think so, because I think the due process and grievance already took care of the hourly. We
Yeah,
just
but we-
didn't have anything.
But
for
we never
salary.
did anything with the grievance. I mean, that part of it just disappeared. We
I
never
think
took
everybody
care of it.
agrees we should just get rid of the grievance process.
Yeah,
Just get rid of that.
Yeah.
I think we're already covered on the right to be heard.
If the executive committee, if the feeling is, and the commissioners anticipate blessing something like that, I'll work with John and we can get the hourly classified employees due process right, and the opportunity to be heard, probably taking a peek at what the sheriff's doing on his own, and having that be its policy to make sure it's what we want it to be, and put that for the commission for an adoption. If we got a consensus, that's what the executive board wants.
and I got the impression that the two major players are two attorneys.
That's unclassified, that's the second question.
Well, okay.
I'm talking about hourly classified.
I thought that's what we were trying to get accomplished. Yeah, but we did part of it, but then left out the most important part. Because we just.
Anybody on the Zoom feed disagree with doing that on the hourly folks?
Don't disagree.
Just leave them all on mute, then they can't
Okay, so-
answer. See, that's the great thing about
Okay,
Zoom.
let's tackle that policy and let's get it put up. We'll put it in front of the commission for consideration.
I can send you guys our stuff.
All right.
Okay, so the next question will be, is for the at-will employees, do we want to create,
We've already got it.
well, we created it,
You want to leave?
I think you got it right now. The question is, do you want to do away with it?
right?
No, I don't see anything wrong with a chance. If they've been accused of some crime or some,
Well, this is the part that Jordan and Danny were weighing in on, because they have the majority of these at-will employees.
I don't know why you wouldn't give them a chance. I mean, say somebody's been accused of sexual harassment or something, they should have the chance to, they're gonna be dismissed. They're at will. We're gonna let them go.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily change the outcome of the discipline. It's just an opportunity to clear their name.
Right, it's just an opportunity for them to say why they didn't do it.
You okay with that, Jordan?
Officer.
I'll be more than happy to do whatever the commission tells me.
Here, there.
Yeah, who is our hearing officer?
Well,
That was our issue.
And we had a great debate about that.
Sheriff Hulse's predecessor had quite the discussion regarding an at-will employee turning over the name clearing right to someone other than himself.
Right.
Which I don't disagree with.
To the county commissioners, which I don't think we wanted.
It's just.
So it could be-
It's not.
Correct.
I could be
It's
the
not decision
HR
making, it's
or
not
the
changing it, it's
Let's
just.
just
the,
It's your feelings.
hearing
Okay,
officer.
good boy.
I think we were going to have one of these with,
Okay,
we were going to have one of these. We've never had one. We were gonna have one of these with an at-will employee that we ended up terminating. The thought at that time, if this ex-employee had wanted to have the opportunity to be heard. Turns out she never did. I was gonna be on it, and another person from that office who didn't make the initial decision was gonna be on that. The employee did not want the elected official or the supervisor on
Okay,
it.
but does that need to be clarified in this while we're doing it?
Yeah, we could add some clarification as far as,
I don't know, by leaving it open-ended, we have a lot of flexibility on who the hearing officer is.
because it may be different for,
Well, but the
I think
argument,
it should be John unless it's in his office, and then it should be you. And then we're off the hook.
but I think the argument that the Sheriff Wild made at the time is then I'm giving somebody the right to overturn that, and
There's
as
no
long,
right to overturn this.
Yeah, it says in there that they will not change the employment action.
Yeah, it's just, they should hear their, and clear their name.
I think John's the right one to be the hearing officer.
but
No,
Not creating
why?
any
You disagree?
contractual
What?
right
do we want
beyond those created by
You
state
know,
and federal laws.
Why do you
others
disagree?
to be on that?
Well, separation of powers. If it's my employee, I don't know how my employee goes to a separate branch of government to clear their name. That just seems odd to me.
No.
I heard from one of your elected representatives that there's only one body that should be all powerful,
Well, and you should agree with that, because in this context, you are the legislative body also.
and I don't.
Um,
But see, I think that's the concern, is are we complicating this thing to where we don't need to?
I think we ought to just leave it the hearing officer. They may approach John, we may figure out who that is they need to talk to. I don't know. It doesn't seem right to say, and it's this person.
Well, and it's only an opportunity to be heard. It
Yeah.
doesn't change,
And
it doesn't change anything other than their opportunity to have a hearing.
So putting this in an attorney's world, they have a right to go to a court reporter and make their report and then hand it to somebody. That may not make any difference, right?
That's why I don't understand your argument.
Yeah, I don't, well, my argument's,
Because all the paperwork's gonna go through HR for your employee that would be released, so why not let him do the name clearing?
Okay, but that, another, and I can't remember if we addressed that, would the record of that be able to go into their file? Because I think that's what they're requesting is, so if
Yes.
somebody gets their file, they have both sides of the story. That's
Says
my
the
argument.
records in the resources, the office will be placed in the records along with the employee's personal files.
Yeah.
So it says right in the policy, that's where it's gonna go. She's gonna put it there.
So do we just want to leave this the way it is then? And change the other,
And give
finish
her
the other that we never
that
got
one.
finished last time?
I think so.
Well, and ultimately, when you look at it, from my perspective, the employee is attached to the county. So if they're coming back to human resources, and you're their employee file, accomplishment. So in general, I think that hearing attached one of your employees, then extra work for you.
Problems has happened.
No, it's never happened.
I think they'll be very rare,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons I think the policy's pretty clear and it's already established. It's just the process if the employee claims the right to it. You just have to notify them about it, right? That's our obligation. You have the right to a name clearing, whether they take it or not.
Okay,
I think the way that's written is important because by them being able to say, well, this is the truth, and that gets written down and put in the file, then somebody requests a personnel file, they get not just the charges and the results, they get,
That
this is my story too.
That person's
And that's
side
all
of the
part
story.
record.
okay, so the John and Danny working together, where do you understand we want to go? And see if it's on the same page,
not touching this one.
on the combination of the
The
two.
class, this one we're not touching. Classified employee, hourly employee, we're going to review it and remove the grievance board stuff. I haven't looked at that policy for, I couldn't even tell you how long.
Okay,
We're gonna review it, make sure that's removed, make sure an opportunity to be heard is built within the due process proceeding. And once that's pretty, submit it to the commission for consideration. That was like a test.
and you passed.
That was good.
Okay, just so we can get it wrapped up
John,
next
you almost
time.
done.
That's we understood.
Okay, all right.
What did we decide on, the leave policy? I missed that part of it.
The which?
The leave,
That, we put that for last because Danny was going to explain what,
okay.
that's the key
What
reason.
that's all about.
Yeah, what your idea was on the exempt employee leave.
Well, same thing as the the salaried, mostly affects Jordan and I. There's two ways the county can go. One, if a salaried employee makes any kind of appearance throughout the day, they don't have to take any vacation for that day. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, you can break that into half days. That's the one I'm in favor of, so that's the policy I wrote up. But the difficult part, like for example, I allow some freedom. Jordan can speak to this maybe here in a minute, but if I have a guy that's on call and he goes out, he's out for 3 hours one night, I just expect him to build that into his 40 hours that week. So if he takes off one afternoon, he doesn't mark his vacation because he's counting that time he was working during the night. Those kinds of things. It's just how we've allowed. That's how I've written it in my policy. But this one is most of what I need to do.
Problem that I see with the way this is written is it doesn't talk about flex time. And so like, I have employees.
Thing I just described.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about flex time. It says basically if they take a half a day off, they have to report 4 hours of vacation. Where that's one of the things with salary employees, you like to give them that flex time because they've earned that, so to speak. And so I think it needs to be something about flex time in there. I mean, they can be mostly expected 40 hours a week, but it doesn't have to be tied to an 8-hour day. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
And there's no way in our time sheets to list flex time either added or taken away
A
from.
salaried
because they're-
employee shouldn't have to.
I know, and the only reason I
Yeah.
ask that is because I spent 7 years under a world where you wrote down everything you did regardless.
Oh, I know.
And some bean counter somewhere down the road may or may not have ever looked to see if flex time added up to
Yeah.
this week to last week's,
Okay, but you're talking flex time versus comp time. Flex time means flexible hours as long as you
Correct.
get your
But
40
doesn't
hours.
comp time mean
Comp time
time
means
and a
you
half
get
for what
extra
you spent?
hours, but that goes for the hourly employees.
Yeah, that's hourly, that's not, no, it's just the salary to
Just
have the
flexible
ability
time.
to be flexible in their hours, they may work through a lunch, they may work on a weekend. And as long as they're working approximately that 40 hours, they shouldn't have to report hours of vacation in my,
When they work 60 or 70 hours.
Yeah.
The week of elections.
that's
prior to
why
elections.
I said roughly, that's why, yeah.
No.
So
Because
how
like
do
I
you,
have John help me and he works half the night in
so how do you
elections.
take that and incorporate it into this,
You
make
could
it
say
understandable?
or flex time instead of vacation.
Well, you're using a term of art that hasn't been defined. I mean, we understand what it means, just like we understand what flex time and comp time and all that. Those are usually classified employee terms. We could build it in. I mean, I think Jordan and I probably share the same concern that you want to make sure that if somebody's doing something, in the evening or early, that they're getting credit for it and that, like I said, if my guy is up in the middle of the night, that doesn't have to mark that off for an afternoon. decides to take off to balance it.
Right. So
Certainly we want those built in, how to make sure that's clear, you know, I have to tweak it a little bit. Jordan?
I don't necessarily know I have much to add, other than we need a clear, kind of a clear policy that makes it a little bit easier to point, say this is particularly what we need. But like you said, I could work on a brief until 8 p.m. I could prepare for a hearing, I could have a trial. And so I don't want to, it's hard to box in the hours because it ebbs and flows. Some weeks are heavy, some are less. And so it's really hard to box them in. But as long as it's clear enough for me to say this is what is expected, then it's easier to enforce.
Well, the question I have is, you said most exempt employees often work over 40 hours. That may not be the case, over 50 hours.
Well, true. I stole that from the policy we were
Yeah.
plagiarizing.
See, because that can make a statement that somebody can say, well, look, I often work more than 50 hours a week, and you know there's some salaried employees that don't take their job very serious, that may often only work 20 or 30 a week. You know, but then it's up to the supervisor, elected official, department head. If they feel like, how do you take care of it if you feel like they're abusing it? That's a thought. You know, it's not a lot for you, it's some for you. I don't see the issue with your salaried employee because he puts in way too much time.
I've got a few salary employees.
They put an awful lot of time. Yeah.
I think that the case is generally speaking, I think that's the case, right?
I thought that's what salary was for.
Well, but the question,
Cheap labor.
You could get more out of it and not pay overtime.
but that's when you've only got one or two to keep an eye on. You have,
Yeah.
you have a bunch, Jordan. And not all of those have the same work ethic.
Jordan, you got any ideas?
Wish I did. I mean, I don't have the time to follow them around and you know what I mean? So I got to keep an eye on, is their work product coming out like I'd expect? Are they keeping up with cases? How many cases do they have? Are things being resolved or things being handled? And if that's the case, then I, you know, tend to give, if things start slacking or they're not showing up, then maybe they get a name clearing hearing.
I mean, IT, they're mostly salaried, aren't they? And that would really, and they work a lot of off hours and, you know,
Weird hours.
yeah.
But I think the concern originally was if somebody's abusing that, they continue to get all of this paid leave on the books, which you end up having to pay for, that they may not have earned it. And I don't know how to police that unless you have time cards. And I don't think that's going to work.
Could you just put something in here that says that the supervisor or elected official can work the flexible time, understanding the target is the 40 hours per week, something.
Yeah, I mean,
Something along
Penny's
those lines.
points, you could put you could have this concept with a little paragraph saying the immediate supervisor or, you know, boss has the ability to work to make exceptions for, you know, off hours worked for various reasons, blah, blah, blah. You could certainly put that in there. I guess the first question is the group, is there a sense the group wants to look at something like this? And if so, then we can tweak it to whatever you want. So let's pass the first question first.
Why were we looking at it in the first place? I can't remember why.
Came up as a part of the unclassified thing.
I can tell you because it wasn't clear and Ron took part of a day off. And so he felt like he had to put the hours.
Oh, that's
in.
right, he was marking all his time
He was
off.
marking his time off. And I said, so let's just get some clarification because he was working the wee hours of the night. You know what I mean? I said, Ron, you don't have to do that.
Oh, and weekends
I'll start
sometimes.
sending
Yes.
Penny a separate bill.
So, yeah.
Let's get on. I just paid one for it.
Yeah. So, I
So
saw
that
that.
was, I would just want some clarification that they didn't have to mark their
Oh,
time
they
sheet,
didn't
you
have
know, if you took 2 hours off. Because it didn't really, he said, well, in the policy it says, and I went,
So, well, what does it say in the policy
it was pretty vague.
that made him think that?
Because this is our proposed policy.
There's nothing on salaries.
I think we
Sort
ought
of, there's like 1,000 different rules for the classifieds. But
to have Danny write something into this to give it a little flex for
Do
the,
you want to put some structure and direction to the salaried employees with enough flexibility for the bosses and the supervisors to you know, not require marking time off when someone's working late and
I would do like John, I would write it into where the supervisor or the office official has that. I think they can work it out with their employees themselves, just like you do.
Okay, well, what if I'm throwing this out without thinking, what if it just said in there, if an exempt employee works less than 40 hours in a week, and the employee shall take vacation in half-day increments?
Yeah.
So that 40 hours is standard.
Except bear in mind, your week prior to the general
You may have
election,
worked 80.
when it may be hours this week.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Right.
Yeah.
I did
I'm
that.
trying, like.
I got it.
So
Yeah.
2-day trial
So I
1
would go
week.
with a longer,
Okay.
whether 2 weeks,
In a pay period
yeah, in
or?
a pay period, or in 21 days, like Paul
Yeah,
said.
within the pay period, right?
I just go for the
Okay,
longer
yeah,
window, because I know you have crunch weeks.
Yeah, you do. I don't know. It was just a suggestion.
What was your 2-day
No, that
trial?
was a good one, because we can articulate, that it needs to be 2 weeks.
So I was gonna say, to John's point is, for example, I could just have a crazy week and working late, and then like literally the next week, which may be a different pay period, I decide to take an afternoon.
Well, and that's why maybe a 2-week period, not time. period,
So
Because then it flexes across.
you could write something in there that if an employee, if the demands of the job of an employee require them to work late or on weekends on occasion, those will be factored into any requirements of the time off. I just want to build in the flexibility Jordan's talking about, Penny's talking, I think that's fine.
That's even more
I think that's
flexible.
appropriate.
I like that.
So Lance and I need a little flex time here, because we've got to meet a guy up on a road
Well,
to
that's,
take care of the
that's
road issue.
hazard pay, that's not flex time.
We'll make sure you mark it
Tell
on
him.
your thing.
Tell Sam who you're meeting and he'll understand
Yeah,
that.
you get a 50% increase on your hourly rate wage for this.
Stan Hawkins to
Oh,
resolve
good
some
luck.
issues, so I'll see you up there, Lance.
I have a taser if you'd like to take it with you.
All right, that's something that just,
Does the group want this?
it sounds like there is a
Assuming
need for a
it
little
can-
more definition.
Well, I'm saying conceptually, does
Right.
the group want it? And then if so, we could tweak it to make sure it's got as much flexibility as Penny, Jordan, and I, need to have.
As vague as we want it, right?
Basically, yeah, something like that.
Big enough to give you the protection and the right. That balance.
So you and Penny and Jordan will work on
It's okay, you can do it.
it. He's already spent a lot of money defending you anyway.
It costs me a fortune.
Did you see the bill?
No,
No.
I think you did, you wrote me, you're like, I have to pay this or you? I'm like, I have to.
what bill? Oh, that bill. Yeah, that's true.
That was cheap.
It was,
Would've been more
for all the
of a
work
bill, but-
Zollinger put it through.
Okay,
All right, thanks.
Adjourned.
Mike,
Yeah.
give me a call, would you?
Who?
Walker.
What's your number?
Well, the one that shows up on my phone's not the right one, apparently. so-
529-1360.
I've been telling people the wrong. direct
What's your
number.
cell phone number?
390-0704. Apparently, the phone has the wrong number on it.
Okay. On your extension?
That's not what it actually is.
Okay, so we kind of clear on where we're going then?
Yeah,
Clear.
so on that grievance procedure, you can send that out to employees and let them, or do we just want, I mean, I just want to make sure we're on the same page as far as eliminating that. You want to do that now? We want to wait till we've made some clarifications on our due process?
So wait till it's done.
Yeah, wait till it's done before, and then review it, so we approve it and then send it out.
We should have all the changes.
Right.
I think what he's asking
Show that,
is you want to go out to Becca before.
Right.
Before you approve it.
well, I think you want to be able to show that is in the due process and that it's a duplication and that's why it's. being-
That's traditionally what we've done.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's required, but it's good practice.
Okay.
I asked her to testify on that opioid litigation fund.
When you said bill, I was thinking legislative bill.
Yeah.